Okay. All right. It's really nice to finally get to be here and speak to the Dutch User Group. As Jeff said, I was supposed to be speaking at your very, very first meeting on a remote link, and we had a couple of firewall problems, so it didn't happen. For those of you that weren't at the summit and didn't meet me, my name's Richard Siddaway. I'm out of the UK. I'm PowerShell MVP, a director of PowerShell.org, and I started up the UK PowerShell group back in 2006, I think it was. 2007 we had our first meeting. Written some books, do a bit of blogging, do some stuff for the scripting guy, and I've been around PowerShell since the early betas of version 1. So I do a lot with WMI, so I thought today I'd take the opportunity to go through the new sim commandlets, pick up some of the tricks and tips around those, look at something called CDXML and how you can create a module in CDXML, and then we get to the fun bit with the demo where it all goes wrong and we all enjoy ourselves. So sim is the new API, new version of WMI. WMI was sim, sim is now, WI is now back to being sim. So the original standard was called sim. Microsoft introduced it, called it WMI. Now they've gone back to calling it sim. Two sets of commandlets, the old WMI commandlets and the new sim commandlets. I'll show those. CDXML is a way to take a WMI class or a sim class and wrap it up in some XML and create a PowerShell module. It's a very quick and easy technique to make WMI much, much easier to use and much friendlier to use. And if you look in Windows 8 or Server 2012 and any of the later versions, a lot of the modules that have been created in that manner. So I'll show you how to do all of that. And if the demo gods are with me, we'll actually see some of the code running. So, how many of you use WMI on a regular basis? How many of you like using WMI? How many of you hate using WMI? Yeah, it's not the friendliest of technologies. It is very, very powerful. So if we go back to PowerShell 1, we had one commandlet, get WMI object. It was, if I remember correctly, the only commandlet at that time that had a computer name parameter, so it was the only way we could access remote machines. So everything was through WMI. There were the type accelerators, if you remember those, square brackets, WMI, WMI class, WMI searcher. You could do some extra things with. In version 2, we got some more WMI commandlets, so we could work with methods, we could work with WMI events. Has anybody worked with WMI events? Yeah? Nice, isn't it? No.
With power events, it's even better.
It's there or thereabouts. It's not the easiest of things to use. It gets a job done if you have to do it that way, but it's not the friendliest of technologies. The only thing worse is really permanent WMI events. If you ever think of going down that route, stop, think again, and find another way of doing it. They're just not right. If you want a suggestion for something for the WMI team to do because they're bored, get them to sort out permanent events so that they can actually run PowerShell rather than VB script. Please. And you can modify WMI instances. And that was all good, and WMI became much, much easier. And if have any of you seen my PowerShell and WMI book? Yeah? Okay, so there's a whole bunch of stuff in there around using those commandlets and how to get the most out of them. And then along came PowerShell 3 and shook everything up by introducing the sim commandlets. The ones I'm showing on the right here are directly partner. They're opposite WMI commandlet, so you've got a get, you've got an invoke, register, remove and set. They work more or less the same way, a few little differences. It's class name versus rather than class. You can still do all the filtering and everything else with them. So up to that point, everything looks good, but there's some more. So that first one, get sim class. If you are poking around in WMI trying to find what is going on, get sim class is the best friend you'll ever have. You can get hold of the class, you can look at the methods, you can look at the properties, you can drill down into the parameters of the methods, you can see all of the stuff about the property, you can discover whether you can actually write to it, and it really is the best way to go. One of the major problems with WMI is that it is not very well documented, and this will go a long way to get you around that. Question?
Yeah, I think when you used WMI, you also had to look for, for example, we were looking for last boot up time. You had to look on the internet, where can I find it? And with sim class, you can do that.
And I'll show you sim class in action when we get around to the demo. But one of the big problems with WMI is the level of documentation. In many instances, it's just not there. You can search on the internet and you will at best find a list of the methods and properties. Very often you won't even find that. So if you want to poke around in WMI and investigate a class, that's the way to do it. Have you played with the associations in WMI? So if you've got something like the Win32 network adapter class, it is associated with the network adapter configuration class, so that you can find the two sets of information. Get sim associated instances and an easier way of working with that. New sim instance, it's there, but it doesn't have that much use. The important ones are at the bottom, the sim sessions. With WMI, we were using DCOM. So the WMI commandlets, they're using DCOM to talk to remote machines. Now DCOM is one of the most unfriendly protocols known to man, and if there's a firewall in the way or anything else that stops it, your remote connectivity dies and you can't do anything with the box. With sim commandlets, they work over WSMAN exactly the same way that PowerShell remoting works, so you've got a very firewall-friendly method of communicating, and you can set up a session, and these are working exactly the same way that the remoting sessions work. You've got very similar options, and you can do exactly the same things with them, and they work very nicely. CDXML, Commandlet Definition XML. This basically takes a technology called commandlets over objects. At the moment, if I'm correct, it's only WMI classes that have been exposed this way, but
depends what you mean by at the moment. Are you talking about publicly released versions, or are you talking about...
I'm public release version. I think in the OData stuff in 5 is, is going that way as well.
In the previews, the same technology is used to expose OData as commandlets.
And I have seen an example piece of code that somebody knocked up just to basically wrap a .NET object in the same way, which is a little bit of a circular argument in sort of wrapping .NET in XML to use it in a .NET-based product, but it was a proof of concept just to show that you could. The important thing about this is this bottom bit. About 60% of the commandlets in Windows 2012 were created in this manner because it's quite easy to create a WMI provider with the new API, wrap it in some XML, and hey, you've got a module you can ship. And all PowerShell users love you because you can now manage your DNS server or your DHCP is binary, or your network connections or lots of other things in a very, very easy manner. So you take the same class, you wrap it in this XML, which I'll show you. Unfortunately, we don't have anything great in the way of tools to do this, so cut and paste is your friend. It is not difficult XML. It's quite logical. There is a white paper available that describes the schema and has some very good examples. If you look in the modules folder in the install directory for Windows PowerShell on Windows 8 or Server 2012 or above, you will find hundreds of examples of this. That is your best reference. Select string is your friend here because you can go searching for stuff and, oh, that's how they do it. Yep, we're off. We're working. You create the XML file, you save it as .cdxml, put it on your PowerShell module path, and it's a module. It works exactly the same way as other modules. It auto-loads, get command exposes the commandlets in it, and so on and so on. You get things like parameter validation, get it to work on the pipeline, accept values across the pipeline, work with parameter sets. Almost anything you can do in a advanced function, you can do in one of these. Syntax is very slightly different, but it's all logical and it all works. I said almost because I can't remember tripping over anything, but I haven't tried everything, so I can't guarantee that everything works. Couple of issues. One is that the help must be external, so you can't do the comment-based help. I'll make the slides available, Jeff, if anybody actually wants them, and all of the demo code.
Twitter.
No. Stop. You get some freebies added when you do this, so you automatically get an as job parameter. You ultimately get the ability to work over some sessions, that the class must exist on the remote machine. You get the common parameters and the auto load works. So this is a very simple example. You've probably all used the Win32 BIOS. Certainly, how many of you taken part in the scripting games ever? Yeah, you'll have used that because that's one of our favourites. By the way, there are some new scripting games coming in the not too distant future. Be one-liner type things rather than the over-the-top one that we had last time. That was fun though. Okay, so what have we got? 2 lines of header. You always need that. Just copy it in. Class name, namespace, standard stuff. Version number, you set that. It's arbitrary. You make it up. Change it as you need to. Set the noun. You'll automatically get the get part of it. So this will produce a module that has one commandlet, get BIOS. You then have this bit where it says instance commandlets. So this is your standard get parameters. The BIOS class doesn't have much in the way of things you can do with it, so it's a nice simple example. And you just wrap up the XML and finish it off, and that's all you need. And that gives you a nice command that says get BIOS, and you can give that to one of your junior admins, and he can work quite happily because he understands get BIOS. He doesn't understand Win32_BIOS. And it makes life easier for him. So that was a very, very simple example just to show the XML. Life does get a little bit more complicated as we go along. If you're going to look at this, have a look and download the white paper. I've given the URL there. There's also a bunch of documentation on MSDN. The slides will be available, so don't worry about writing that down. If you want more references, I did a bunch of stuff about this in the PowerShell and WMI book. We also covered it in PowerShell in Depth. The second edition of that is on the way. Having a lovely time with the publishers. copy editors. How many of you got the deep dives book? Great. This is written by a bunch of MVPs and PowerShell experts. All of the royalties from this go off to Save the Children. So if you want a good collection of essays on PowerShell, ask Father Christmas to bring you a copy of that. It's well worth it, and all the royalties go to a good cause, and the publisher actually bumped the royalties up because it's going off to charity. My blog, blah. Okay, let's start looking at some code. As somebody said, was it yesterday? This isn't a PowerPoint user group, it's a PowerShell. Yeah, that was an absolute classic statement.
I said I'm not a PowerPoint MVP.
That was it, yes. I'm not a PowerPoint MVP, I'm a PowerShell MVP.
I have another question. Isn't it possible, if you use the sim command, that's also to choose the protocol being used, if it's DCOM
yes.
or WSML?
Yeah, it's a very, very good point. Thank you. By default, if you run on the sim commandlets on your local machine, you will use COM to talk to the local machine. As soon as you use the computer name parameter, either to talk to the local machine or the remote machine, you're talking over WSMan. Now there is a little catch in that the WSMan version went up from 2 to 3 with PowerShell 3. The sim commandlets don't like talking to WSMan 2 on PowerShell 2. So you've got two options. One is that you either create a sim session using DCOM. So in the session options, you just tell it to use the DCOM protocol and use those options when you create the session. The other one that works, and nobody's ever been actually able to explain it, is that if you use a filter, it will work, even against the down-level WSMan. Jeff Hicks showed that at Summit before last. And we've never understood why, and nobody's ever actually stopped scratching their heads long enough to think why would that work. But if you use the filter, it works. It's just one of those quirks of nature that make life so much fun. Is that text size okay for the back? Good. Right, so I'll make all of these available and you can play with them later on. We'll start working through them. Okay, so using WMI, as long as you know the class, it's fairly easy. And if it's a nice easy class like Win32 BIOS, you just put it into WMI object and you get some information back. All nice and good. If you do sim instance, it looks very much the same. If you put class into the sim instance, it works because of the parameter shrinking and PowerShell working out what you're trying to do. So they look very, very much the same. They work in the same way, except in what comes back. With WMI, you get a live object with all the methods on. With sim, because of it working over WSMan, it's like remoting. You get in an inert object that only has the properties. You don't get the methods back on the object. So you can't do $x equals get WMI or get sim instance Win32 process and then do something with the object methods to kill off processes, for instance. If you get lots of objects back, like with a service, you then got to start doing things with them. So filtering, that's where most people start. Why shouldn't we do it this way?
Resources.
Yeah, because it's fine on the local box. If you do that remotely, you bring in all of the data back and then you're filtering it. If you're just going off to one machine, it probably doesn't matter. If you're going off to 100 or 1,000 machines, it starts to get painful. So while it works, So what's a better way of doing it? Filter. I don't need to give this talk, I can go. Okay, so if you're using sim instance or WMI object and you want to restrict the data you're bringing back, use the filter parameter. It's a little bit awkward sometimes and you have to play around with it just to get it right, but the bit that normally catches people, bring this down so I can reach it, is this bit, wrapping the single quotes within the double quotes so that it goes across as a string. It'll soon tell you if it doesn't like what you're trying to do.
Probably also in the help file, right?
Yeah.
Filtering syntax as with WMI, so they can.
Yeah, it's the same. It's actually Windows query language. Not Windows query language. WMI query language. It's just everything after the where. If you've used WQL, you can use filters. So you can filter on state. You can filter on start mode. As I said, the sim instance doesn't show you the methods. You will see these methods, but they've got nothing to do with the sim class, the .NET object.
With the WMI command, you also had a parameter query. Right?
Yes, you do with the sim instance as well. You can run.
So what's the difference between using the filter, because I think that's also the WMI query language, and using the query parameter to write?
Yeah. So if you just jump out of this. So. Okay, so that's using a filter. If you do a query equals so your choice is using filter and doing it like that.
And what's the advantage with the query? You can do stuff like and or, and with filter not?
Okay, the filter is actually this part, everything after the where. So in the filter you can do.
In query you can select one thing from multiple classes.
Yeah, the biggest difference is that with this one it's a little easier to put the properties in because you can do it all in one string. So you, rather than star, which brings everything back, you can actually put the properties there. There is a properties parameter that you could use instead that would do this. If you look what is happening when you actually run this, if from what I've seen, it appears that underneath when PowerShell actually runs, it actually takes that and turns it into that.
But can you use with filter, for instance, suppose I want to get back the process bits.
Yeah.
When the state is stopped.
Yeah, you can.
Can that be done with filter, or can that only be done with query?
Yeah. So if you want, let me find another service, and you can. So your filter could be name equals bits and name equals something else, or name equals bits or state equals stopped. So you can do the multiple filters. I tend to use the filter because it's less typing.
Another really good kind of use of query is when you found an old VB script, you know, for example on Script Center, and then you had a full-on WQL query. That's the thing that you can just copy and paste without having to change it.
Yeah, if you're doing that and picking up something from VB script, that's, as Lee said, picking up the query and using that is a really good place to start. If it's in your script, it doesn't really matter whether you're going down the query or the filter. If you're doing it by hand, it's just less typing. The one thing with picking up WMI scripts that were originally written in VB script, do not create an object and then use write host to write out all the properties.
That are the examples on the
yes, I know. I know. It's, yeah, we won't go there. So using sim commandlets and the WMI commandlets in this way is all great, but PowerShell encourages us really to think in commandlets, especially for people coming into it new. It's the bit that we always talk about. This is how you do something. You get service, or you get process, or you run remove item, or whatever. It's all commandlet based. So using something like get service and the name parameter is much easier than using WMI. So it'd be nice if we could have the same sort of approach. So this is the module or the CDXML file that I showed you on the slide. The only reason I'm using import module is that it's all in this demo folder, which is off my module path. And get BIOS is a lot easier to give to somebody compared to telling them to run a WMI query. So you can see that it comes through as a sim module. If you, it won't always come through that. If you've got a PSD1 file, it doesn't come through as sim. So it's got a name and it shows you the exported commandlets just like any other module. And you can see the command and all of the normal module handling works. And as I said, when you run this, or sorry, when you create this, you automatically get the sim session, the throttle limit, the as jobs, and all of the common parameters. Things like what if will only work if they're actually supported by the WMI provider. If they're not, and that's the case on most of them, you can put it in there, but it won't actually do anything for you.
How would that work, Richard, if you're using non-trusted domain and you need to pass parameters in?
There is a credentials parameter on it, so you can put the credentials into the call.
So you would still put that in the CDXML?
No. You put that in the sim session. When you create the sim session, you use that when you create the sim session, you give it the, if it's not in the domain and it's not a trusted box and your credentials won't work, it's just like any other piece of remoting. You create some credentials, you pass them in to create the session.
So you would still probably have the help desk person having to create that before they can use the get BIOS, for example?
It depends how you do it. If you put this down on the local box, and they were remoting into it, for instance, or they were getting the a trick that I've seen a lot of times is that you put a set of scripts on the workstation and ask the user to run script X. You could do it that way as well, if all you need is the help desk to have the information to come back.
You can also write a tool for that the tool will create a sim session and as a parameter you say BIOS.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, seen that, that's just the XML.
Richard, where is the get verb?
It's, I'll go back to the slide because it showed it better.
I saw a noun, but not the verb.
Yeah, so, blah, 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 where are we? Okay, so there's your default noun, that's where the BIOS comes from. It's this line, actually puts it in automatically for you. So the get commandlet parameters, default parameter set, blah, that will just generate the get commandlet for you in this simple case. We'll get a little bit more clever as we go through because you can actually put filtering parameters in here. So you can filter on name, or we're running through the service class, so you can run filter on name or state or display name or other things. But I'll show you how this gets a little bit more complicated as in the next demo.
Is it also easy to add a computer name parameter? Because with the WMic object command.
No, that's why you have the sim session. So you have to do it over the sim session. You don't get a computer name parameter. There's nothing in the XML schema that will allow you to put a computer name parameter on. So, where are we? Not that one.
And what do you use to write the XML?
I do most of it in ISE. Okay. So I'm going to, I think it's this one. Right. So if you think back to what we had with the BIOS, all I've done is change the class. I've changed the noun. When I'm working with these, I just tend to shrink the class name down to use it as a reminder of what I'm doing. And in this case, because we've got all of the service commandlets, and I'm only really using the service class here as an example of how to do this, because it's got a lot of nice features that give a good example. It's not something that I would recommend that you necessarily do as one of the first things you think of in these. So we've got the default noun, this will get us the get verb, and that's all we need.
So if you have a template like that, it's pretty easy to automate creating those CDXML files.
That's basically what I do, is I just take one of these as a starting point and make the changes and cut and paste.
Even that you could automate, right?
You can.
If you just put in a variable at default noun and a variable at Win32 underscore service.
The WMI team published some scripts for doing this, but they were a little bit over enthusiastic in the way they worked, in that they gave you, so if the class had 10 methods, you got all 10 methods. If it had 20 properties, you got all 20 properties put in there, and you then ended up taking a lot out. So I used them a few times, but and they work fine, but it's just a little difficult to get your head around what those have actually done.
Richard, I believe Microsoft has provided a tool for, at least for vendors, that automatically does this, but is it only for vendors, or?
I haven't excuse me, I haven't seen it. There was a plugin for Visual Studio for doing this that would allow you to import the class, and it made a lot of metadata available to make this easy. That was available during the beta period of version 3, but I don't think it ever went out of beta, and I think the last time I looked at it, it actually disappeared. So,
Amazon uses a tool for Microsoft to automatically create their commandlets with this. So
Actually, Amazon writes their cmdlets talking to a REST endpoint. They've written their own code generator that talks to that and creates cmdlets out of it.
okay.
But hopefully with the new OData stuff, they might have a better time and not have to write that code by hand.
It's one of the things to do on my to-do list is to do a nice, sensible auto generation of these things. Unfortunately, my to-do list is like this. It keeps getting pushed down by other things. Yes, it's like, when are you going to go and paint that wall and other things that my wife wants doing?
The honey-do list is before the hobby list.
Yeah.
Maybe for scripting games.
That's an idea. Oh, yes. Now there's a thought. There's a thought. Okay, so we've created our XML, we've imported the module, we've got our get Win32 service, and we've got the usual extras. We can use it as you would expect. We can filter afterwards. I'm only doing that to cut down the amount of stuff that comes back, because for some reason we seem to have a lot of services in Windows. And we can filter on state. So it's just behaving like any old commandlet that you would expect to have. We can run it as a job. Just give that a second. That should have finished by now. And so you saw, you just add the as job parameter, off it goes, generates the job, and that runs and works as a normal sim job. Tidy up. And you can use sim sessions. This is just going against the local machine to make the demo simple. And that all works quite nicely. But filtering's still a little bit of a pain, so let's have a look at how we can create some filter parameters. So if you look at the Win32 service class, and we look at the properties, you've got a, where are we? You've got a display name, and you've got a, somewhere in here, you've got a name. Now, the name is the short cryptic thing most of the time, and then the display name is the big thing that you see in the GUI. So you really want to be able to work on both. And I don't want to do that. So if we look at name, it's a string, all nice and easy to use. And if we look at service N, sorry, I can't read that one. That's better. So if you remember what we had before, that's the bit that's been added. So I'm telling it that we're using a property name as name. That's the WMI class property name. That's the name that will come through on the commandlet. So if you don't like what the property is called, you can change it. That's the type that you need to work with. And one thing to remember with sim is it works with unsigned integers, not normal integers, which just makes life a little awkward when you forget that and it doesn't work.
That's the type of
the property.
Of the property.
The
class.
Of the class.
Of the command.
Of the class. It's just you need the properties to match from the parameter to the class. Allow globbing equals true. Allows you to put wildcards in, and that's all you need. So you build it up like this, a series of steps with your XML. It all works nice and simply. So we'll import that. And I'm just trotting through these as individual ones. So you can run it without any parameters and you get everything back as you would expect a nice behaved commandlet to do. You can add the name and it just works very nicely. So that's good.
Does that support wildcards and stuff?
Yes, because if we go back to the XML, you're allowed globbing equals true as your wildcard. If you don't have that, it will not allow wildcards. So you can actually control whether you can put wildcards on the parameter or not.
There's also a attribute value from pipeline by property.
Yes.
So this will also work in the pipeline.
Yeah, so that's a very good point. I missed that when I was talking through this bit at the end. Let me just drag that across so it's more visible. You can see.
It's false.
Okay, so value from pipeline by property name, you set that to true and it will work on the pipeline like a nice well-behaved commandlet, and you can get into parameter sets which we'll see.
Can you put some parameter validation in there?
Have you been peeping? I'm coming to that in a little while.
It's from the future.
Yeah. And you want to maybe work by display name. So this is exactly the same piece of code. The only thing that's changed is the properties that we're using, and that works on display name. I'm doing these individually because it's easier for you to see in the demo the individual steps. In reality, you'd have all of these all in the one file.
Does it accept an array?
That doesn't, because I deliberately left it singular to keep it nice and simple for the demo. But if you change that to an array, it will take an array.
Okay.
Actually, to be honest, I didn't think of making it an array. It's probably closer to the truth.
Do you have to define either string or array, or can you define both?
If it's defined as an array and you only put one in, it makes it's effectively an array of one, like any of the other commandlets.
Advantage of PowerShell 3.
Yeah, so you actually, if you look at this, if you look at the syntax, it automatically makes it into an array for you. I hadn't realised that. It's the same with the sim sessions. That automatically takes an array. I'd not actually noticed that before. That's useful. And you can work with display name. Just needs a little bit more typing, but you can use wildcards as we said. And I'll go through these fairly quickly because they're all very much the same. So if you want to look at the start modes, I couldn't remember what they were, so you use PowerShell to help you find them. That group object is really useful for things like when you're digging into things like this. And so services, that's S. There we are. Right, so this gets a little bit more complicated. Not by much, but you've got your property name, the state. You notice I've changed this to status because to me that's an easier use than state. It's still a string, it still allows wildcards. But do you notice these? Validate not null or empty, validate on a set. You can only have running and stop services. And that allows, I think actually, is that right? Did I just show the wrong one? Yes, because that's not what I was That's better. That's what I was wanting to show. Right. So looking at the start mode, and you can create a set of values. So auto, manual, disabled, those are the only start modes that you want to be interested in. And that works exactly the same as the validation set in an advanced function. And you just use it in exactly the same way. Yeah, that's... So you can see the autos, the disabled, manuals, and if you put something that doesn't exist, you get the usual error value that tells you argument enabled does not belong to the set, and then it tells you the set. So it works exactly the same way as you would expect what we would think of as a normal PowerShell commandlet.
There is also an automatic parameter throttle limit, right?
Yeah.
So how would that work anyway?
The throttle limits for the jobs.
Okay.
The same as on WMI object. If you don't put a value, it throws the errors you would expect, and if you deliberately put a null in for whatever bizarre reason, that will work as well, but it makes a nice demo. And state name, I showed you the code, so we'll bring that in. And we're filtering on status, so running, I'll just run through these very quickly because I'm conscious of time. Right, now let's put all of this together. And this is where I've brought all of this little lot together. This is where it starts to get a little big in terms of XML. I think it's this one, yeah. So all you do is just put all of the stuff in the same CDXML file, and you've got everything that you need. And the one trick is I've got parameter set by status, by mode, by display name, by name. So when we import this and look, you get the nice parameter sets. So if you're working with name, you don't really want to be working with start mode, and so on, and they work as you would expect. So everything on name, display name, start mode, status. Parameter sets, if you deliberately break across the parameter sets, it will tell you that it's not going to play and it doesn't want to talk to you. And that is your basic commandlet.
How does it handle dynamic parameters, or does it even?
No.
Also Bartek.
Clear?
Yes, that's Bartek's problem. I don't do dynamic parameters. There's no dynamic parameters in WMI. It's not allowed. I wouldn't even want to think of what the XML would look like in that case. It would be horrendous.
Is that the definition of XML?
XML is your friend. It's lovely. Okay, so we've looked at the class and we looked at the properties. So we've built ourselves a get commandlet that has some very nice properties, and we can filter on those properties to make it much easier to use. However, WMI, many of the classes have a bunch of methods, and in the case of Win32 service, we can start, stop, pause, resume, assuming that it allows it, and I stop bashing the screen. It would be nice to have some of those available as well. So let's have a look at stop service. It doesn't need any parameters, and we implement that with like this. So these are, if we start at the top, we've got our header stuff and the, the start mode. If we start at the top, we've got our header stuff and the, the start mode. If we start at the bottom, we've got our stop mode. So these are, if we start at the top, we've got our header stuff and the, the start mode. If we start at the top, we've got our header stuff and the, class name, etc. These are common properties that will appear across all of the commandlets that you create in this module. So you've got name, display name, start mode that we've seen all before. They will appear on the get and all of the other commandlets. This is the bit that you need to turn that stop method into a stop service commandlet. So you've got the method name, the verb you want it to come across, and your impact. That's it.
And what does that impact tell you?
It works, it's the standard PowerShell impact. So if you've got your impact preference set, if that is same as or above, it will force a confirm before you go ahead with the action.
How should you define your impact?
Depends on your state of paranoia and the state of the process, state of your systems and your general policies within the organization.
Jeff, do you mean within your own CDXML or in your own general set?
Okay.
General set.
Okay. So by adding those few lines of XML, we've got a second commandlet, and it works pretty much the same as the other one. As the get commandlet, and it has all of the parameter sets, and so we can get the service, we can stop the service, and that all works very nicely.
Is there a way you can associate parameters with a commandlet? For example, stopping all of the services with auto might not be a good idea.
Yeah. So if we go back to the XML a bit, again, you're from the future. Basically in here you can put some parameters on so that you can have parameters that are common across all of the commandlets in your module. So name and so for instance name you would want on all of them. So you put that at the top in your common parameters. Then you explicitly define the parameters you want on your get commandlet, and then explicitly define the commandlets that you want on each of the parameters that you want on each of the other commandlets that you're defining from the methods. And so you can change the parameter sets across the sets of parameters across the commandlets very easily. So if we look at service 2, that's going to add the start. So this is where cut and paste really is your friend, because that literally was copy, change, off we go. So we've now got 3 commandlets. You can't produce commandlets quicker than this.
What language are those commandlets compiled?
Underneath, they create very long PowerShell functions.
In .NET or PowerShell?
It's in PowerShell. So you know, like workflows generate PowerShell functions. This creates functions the same.
Will you also be showing now every time you import using CDXML, right?
Yeah.
Will you also show how to create a normal module?
The only reason that I'm using import is because this isn't on my module path. If you put, so you know you've got the standard positions for modules in the PowerShell install folder or your documents folder. You can create a Windows PowerShell.
Just put the CDXML file in that folder. And
treat it as a normal module. Create a subfolder on in your modules area. Put the CDXML file in, and it'll auto load.
So there's no need to do some conversion from the CDXML file?
No, okay. It all just works. The only reason I'm doing it this way is because I've got so many different versions that I don't want them all auto-loading, because it would become a little bit of a mess. And as the last one wins, it would make the demo interesting and funny, but we wouldn't get very far.
So get command reports these functions?
It treats them...
Take a look.
It treats them as commandlets, but in reality they're functions. So pretty much the way advanced functions work, or a script module works.
Sure. No, I was just wondering, if they wind up in the function drive.
Yeah, they do. You have to hunt around a bit for them, but they are there. So we can start it back up again.
Yeah.
And conscious of time, you can do the same with pause and resume. The code is exactly the same style, so I'll just quickly skip through that. So that gives you a couple more commandlets. Just because you can create this suspend and resume doesn't mean that it automatically will. It depends whether the service will accept those calls.
What's the behavior of that?
If it's a non-pausable service, it just barfs.
Okay.
The same as you would expect. It's probably possible to test it, and if you're doing this as a PowerShell function, I don't think there's anything in the CDXML to allow you to do that.
How do you put the help in there?
It has to be an external file.
Separate?
Yeah. So you go and get one of the help generators, and
There is also a what if switch.
that will only work if the WMI provider supports what if.
And how do you know?
You try it and see.
Trial and error.
Yeah. From experience, all of the major providers don't.
So if you use it with your stop service and you use what if,
It will tell you that the provider doesn't support that.
Oh, that's nice. Just do it.
But at least it doesn't stop the service. So it's sort of doing a what if, but it's not actually. And you can, the last one is the change the start mode, which just skip through that on a set. So you can set the start mode of your services with a nice set commandlet.
Do you have the
It
option
didn't
to
actually
set?
work though, right?
No, it doesn't, because you have to stop the service.
Fair enough.
Yeah, you actually, if it works if you're the first time you set it, and then, but if you actually want to change it back to auto, you have to stop the service and do it. And I think that was it.
Do you have the option to set, because now you have the options to set it to auto, manual, or disable?
Yeah.
You also have the delayed start?
Yes, I think so. I just didn't put that in to keep it simple.
The reason that you're asking is because with the set service you can't.
No, I know some applications or some services from customers require delayed start, otherwise it simply doesn't work.
Yeah,
I'm not sure
he
about
used the group function, so he went off and queried his entire service
Yeah.
So,
selection. I assume you can put any, whatever it can be, it can be.
Okay.
so just to be conscious of time, because Jeff will be wanting me to stop very shortly, this is the final-ish version. So starting from the top, we've got the queryable parameters that we want on everything. So that's name and display name. I then changed it, so I've got an explicit get commandlet. And you have to repeat the name and display name. And then you can put the start mode and state for filtering. You then get into the commandlet definitions using the methods. And you notice I haven't put any parameters on these because they inherit the common ones from the top.
Is there actually any way when you write one of those to prevent the commandlets that are being created to not assume the name of already existing commandlet?
Yep, because it's all under your control. So you've got at the very top, you've got this default noun. So if you don't use a noun, it will take that. And then all of the way down, you've got the option to put a verb in. So you can set the verb to whatever you want. And when you get down into the commandlets here, we've got a verb. You've also got a noun attribute that you can use. So you can change the nouns to suit anything you want. So it is totally under your control as to what you call it. So you could call it A-B if you wanted. It's totally under your control.
So you can work with the prefix property also?
It doesn't work. No, it doesn't work with the. But actually, no, because you're using import module, you can put the prefix on that. So you could put a prefix on it.
Can you also use this to create aliases?
Not directly. The way you would do that is you'd have to create a PSM1 file to go with it to create your aliases and export, and then just export all your commandlets and your aliases. Pardon?
You have commandlet aliases?
You could. There's nothing in here to create the aliases directly. So if you want aliases as loaded automatically as part of your module, you'd have to do it that way. Actually, thinking about it, that's wrong. That's silly, because what you could do is you could probably override it at this level. I haven't actually tried it, but I suspect you could force a name there that would function as an alias. I'll have to have a look at that.
And aliases for parameters?
Again, you'd have to. It will work with the sort of shortened parameter names as you would expect. There's nothing in here to set explicit aliases for parameters.
And actually, I think in PS Home, there's a XSD to actually talk about what you can do in the XML. If it's not there, it's actually for sure it's online, and so you can see commandlet has a aliases attribute or not.
Yeah.
Kind of get an understanding of the language that way.
Yeah. That white paper that I give you the downlink for, that has it has a version of the XSD. I'm assuming I don't know whether it's the latest one or not, but as Lee said, it's online. It's an interesting read, especially late at night when you're trying to get to sleep. It's well worth a look if you're getting interested in this. So, being conscious of time, I'm going to wrap up there because I've shown you everything that I was planning on showing. If you've got any questions, quite happy to take them now until Jeff tells me to pack up. If not, thank you very much, and I'm glad to have been here. Thank you.